we are going to be making this gorgeous Valentine's Day shrug today. You can make these with the hearts, or you can just make them with normal granny squares. It's up to you, and I will take you through this whole thing. So this is measuring about a size large. I would say I'm a medium, so this is just a little bit roomier for me. This would be a size large, and I will show you the other ones that I have made. I made this one for myself, and this one is so cute. And this one I made just a little bit smaller, so you just make your squares smaller. This is a smaller one. This is actually for sale on my Etsy. This would be a size small. And I didn't do as much of gathering in on the sleeves on this one, but of course it has a drawstring. You can pull these tighter to make it a puffier sleeve. And it's just a little small for me because this is a size small. I am a medium, and I did not use the hearts on this one. I just did regular granny squares, which you can do. Isn't this so cute? This is just gorgeous. I love it. Okay, so let's get started. For the yarn, I'm just using a regular big twist acrylic yarn. You could make this in cotton, you could make this in acrylic, you could make this in any yarn you wanted to. You can just adjust your hook size to your yarn. So I have been using the red big twist. This is just in a varsity red for my hearts. This is the pattern that I'm using. I am going to take you through this heart as well here, this granny square heart, in this tutorial as well. So I'm using the red for my heart. I'm stash busting. So I just grabbed all of my little balls of red that I have, and I've been just using them all up on the hearts. So I haven't even broken into a new skein. I've been just using my stash, my extra yarn stash, to make all of my hearts. You could make these hearts in any color that you want. For the rounds of the granny square to go around, I'm using a blush pink. This is a light rose is the name of the color, and again I'm using an acrylic yarn, but you could use cotton if you prefer. And these skeins are running 380 yards per skein. They're a 6 ounce, 347 millimeter, 170 grams, and I am using roughly 2 to 3 of these skeins depending on the size that I am making. If I am making a medium size to small, I would maybe only use 2 of these skeins for my gauge. And then if I'm making something that is sort of large and above, I would use at least 3, maybe 4 of these skeins. It all depends on your sizing. These granny squares can be made in a variety of ways. So if you watch my other tutorial, I show you how to make these granny squares the flat version like this, or the 3D version like this, where you have this little ribbing that comes across. You make these the same way. It's just depending on how you attach them, makes it look like this or this. And for this tutorial, I'm making my hearts in the flat version. So I've already made all of my hearts. I'm going to take you through the whole process. Okay, for hooks, I am going to be making most of this shrug using a 6 millimeter hook. You can adjust your hook size for your tension depending on what size square you are needing. In the video, sometimes I want to size down, so I have a 5 millimeter also. And then I like to trace around my hearts on the border with a 4 millimeter just to tighten up that heart. And this is optional. If you have all 3 of these hook sizes, great. And if you don't, you can just use whatever you have that will go with your yarn, and it should be fine. Roughly, we are going to be making granny squares where when we are measuring the added rows, these added rows are about 1 inch. That's my gauge. It all depends on how tight or loose you crochet. Going to need a pair of scissors, a yarn needle to weave in our ends, a tape measure, a stitch marker or 2 might be handy for this project. Okay, so let's start with making our heart. And with any of my tutorials, if you're posting or selling finished products using my tutorials or my patterns from Etsy, then just please write in your video or your post, pattern by Melody Yarn Tinka. It would be great if you gave a link back to me or my Etsy shop or my YouTube channel. That would be great. Okay, so I'm always going to leave a tail to sew in my ends. Okay, so leave yourself a tail, and you're going to make a circle and push that yarn up through the circle. And if you need to make this video slower, you can click on the cog wheel and slow the video down in settings. You can slow the whole speed of the video. And if you need to skip ahead, just use the timestamps. All right, so I've left a tail. I've got my loop here, my slip knot. I'm inserting my hook into my slip knot, and we're going to chain 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. We're going to loop the yarn twice around the hook because we're going to do treble crochets. So loop around twice, insert your hook right into that very first chain you made, all the way at the very beginning. Go in, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2 loops, yarn over, pull through 2 loops, yarn over, pull through the last 2 loops. That is a treble crochet. Okay, we're going to make 2 more, 2 loops. We're going into the same hole, the same first chain. Okay, that's our second treble, 2 loops again, go into that same very first chain. Okay, that's our third treble. So we have 3 trebles in our same first chain here, and we're working all of these stitches into that very first chain. Okay, so now we're going to do 4 double crochets. So just 1 loop. That's 1 loop, 2, and we're going to be working over our tail. So hold your tail to the left here of your stitches. So when you're starting to make your stitches, you're working over your tail. Okay, that is 3 and 4. So we have 4 double crochets. If you want a more detailed tutorial, you can watch my tutorial to do these hearts and the squares on my channel. All right, so just for a recap, we chained 4, we did 3 treble crochets, and then we've done 4 double crochets. And now we're going to do 1 more treble crochet. So 2 loops, we're going into that same ring, that very first chain, and we're placing our treble crochet right there. Okay, and we're going to put a stitch marker on this treble crochet stitch just so it's easier for us. All right, so now whatever we did on this side, we have to do on the other side. So we're going to do 4 double crochets. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so we just did 4 double crochets, and now we're going to do 3 treble crochets. So 2 loops going into that same center ring with a treble crochet. There's 1, we do 2 loops. Here's 2, and we're going to do 1 more. Okay, that's 3 treble crochets, and now we're going to chain 3. And then what I like to do is, so we're going to need a number 4 hook, or you could do this with the same hook. So we have our number 4 hook, and this is optional. You don't need to use this number 4 hook. I just like to use my number 4. All right, so I just insert my number 4, and then we're going to make a slip stitch down into the center ring. It's just easier to do it with a small hook. So you insert your hook in there, and I like to twist my heart around so it's easier for me to just pull it right through that stitch, just like that. Okay, so we have a slip stitch right there, and I'm not going to tighten my heart at all. I'm going to look at this chain, and I'm going to pull my work so I can see the 3 stitches for these 3 chains. Okay, because we're working into the 4th chain, but we have 3 chains up here. And if you can't find them all, it's okay, don't worry about it. If you can find 2, that's fine. All right, so we're gonna go way to the bottom here and do a single crochet. So insert your hook into the very first chain that you can find. Okay, so you're going to insert your hook into that very first chain that you can find at the very bottom. So insert that hook into that chain, grab your yarn over, pull up, yarn over, pull through. So we're doing a single crochet. And then go up into the very next chain that you can find, insert your hook, yarn over, pull up, yarn over, pull through. Okay, and we're going to do that to the next chain here. Same thing. And these do not have to be tight stitches. And then we're going to place one single crochet going all around our side of our heart. So go under those 2 loops. We're making single crochets going all the way around until we get to the bottom where we have marked. And you can always do this in a highlighting color, a separate color. I have done them in different colors. If you look at some of my other hearts that I've done, I've used a different color for this row. All right, so we're placing one single crochet. Okay, so we have gotten to the bottom here. So when we get to the place where we have marked, you can take that stitch marker out if you want, and we're going to place 3 single crochets in that very bottom point stitch. So this is the very bottom of our heart where we have that treble crochet. So we're going to place 3 single crochets in the very bottom. And it's handy just to mark the center single crochet with a stitch marker. So the second single crochet that we just did, just place a stitch marker. That's your point. And now we're just going to do a single crochet in all of these stitches going up. Again, we don't have to do this tight. And the reason why I go down to a 4, it's going to hold the shape of the heart better and not stretch out as much because it's using a smaller hook. If you do not have a smaller hook, you can do this all with your same size hook. It will be perfectly fine. Okay, so we've gone all the way up to the top, and we're just going to continue making a single crochet down into these chain stitches. So remember, we did a chain 3. We're going to put a single crochet into each of those 3 chains. Okay, so we've just did a single crochet in our chains all around our heart. We have put 3 single crochets down in the point, and then we did a single crochet going all the way around and plus a single crochet in our chain stitches. And then what I have decided to do for these hearts is at this point, I'm still using my smaller hook. I am going to go down into the center here, and I'm just going to do a single crochet. So I'm going to grab my yarn and I'm going to pull it up. I'm going to loop over and pull it through. Now you could do a slip stitch if you wanted to, or you could do the single crochet like I just did. It's all up to you. It's not going to really change anything, but I just find it's easier to do a single crochet. All right, so now see how everything is nice and loose? Now we're going to turn our heart around and we're going to pull our tail that we were stitching over all of our stitches for that center, and we're going to tighten up that center. We're waiting until the end so it will be easier to find all of these chain stitches. So at the end now, we're going to tighten up our heart by gently pulling that center tail that we placed all of our stitches into here. We've tightened up that circle. Okay, and now you can just leave yourself a little tail and just cut your yarn like this. Pull your yarn tail up through, and you're just going to tighten that last stitch. Okay, and then you're going to turn this heart over and see how we have our 2 tails here. We have our beginning tail and we have our ending tail. We're just going to tie a knot to these 2. Okay, let's tie a knot here. And then we are going to just weave in. You can do this all at the end or you can do it now. I'm just going to do it now so it's not in the way of my tutorial, so it doesn't confuse anybody. So just grab your yarn needle and you're just going to weave in your ends here. So we're just picking up these back stitches. We're not going all the way through so this shows to the front for beginners. So you're just going into the very back stitches, pull your yarn through. Just grab that, stick your finger in here and pull the end through. All right, now you're going to skip a couple stitches. You're going to go back in these stitches. Again, we're not going through to the front. We're just staying right here in the back. So pull your yarn through and then skip some stitches and go back through. Again, this is all in the back. We're not doing anything that shows in the front. This will give you a nice tight weaved in end, okay? And then you just cut off your extra. Now, if you want to do these assembly style and make a bunch of hearts all at once, you can. And you can weave in all of your ends together. It's all up to you. So here's our beautiful heart. Now, you can use this heart on anything that you want. You can add it to anything you want, but isn't that so cute? So for me, this heart, if I measure it right now, it is measuring about 2.5 inches across, okay? So our heart is done, and let's go over some measurements. When I am measuring across, if I'm just gauging this by the first row, it's going to be about 3 inches. If I go from the second row to the end of the second row, it's about 4 inches. If I do another row, it's about 5 inches, and so on and so forth, okay? So each row is going to give you approximately about 1 inch. Now, if your gauge is different, you're going to have to adjust, but I like to do my rows so that they're about 1 inch. That is easier for me to decide what I'm going to do with my projects. So what you're going to do for the measurements, I'm going to show you a chart. And you're going to measure your back. So you're going to take your measuring tape and you're going to measure from shoulder to shoulder on yourself so that you get a back measurement, okay? So let's just say it's 20 inches. You're going to have to decide whether you want to make your shrug using 3 squares in the back or 4 squares. So divide that number by 3 if you're going to do 3 squares, or divide that number by 4 if you're going to do your back with 4 squares. All right, so this is the back of my, let me try to raise this up a little bit. So I did the back of mine with 3 squares, making my the back section, and I have also done one with 4 squares. So it all depends on how many squares you want. So take that back number, that back measurement from shoulder to shoulder, and decide if you want to divide it by 3 or if you want to divide it by 4. This is going to be a long rectangle. The back of your shrug is going to be your sleeve measurement also. Okay, so I have this laid out and I'm making these squares larger. Okay, this is gone because this is the one that I just was showing you in the video. So let me just move one of these squares over here. So I'm in the process of making mine that I'm making right now for this tutorial. This is my back right here. So I'm doing 3 squares going across, and I'm going 3 squares down. And then my side squares here that I'm going to be adding to, let's say these are my side squares right here, my arm squares. So these are going to be for your arm, and I'm using 2 because I want this to be sort of a quarter length sleeve. Okay, so this is measuring 21 inches from here to here because I have 7-inch squares. And then say these 3 panels right here, because I don't have all of my squares made at the time that I'm doing this video. So let's just imagine that these 3 squares are my back measurement, and my back measurement is 21 inches across. Okay, so I made 3 7-inch squares. So this would be my back, and that means the back length is going to be 21 inches also. Okay, so I still have to make some squares. So I'm using 21 squares in total. So I am going to have, when I do all of my squares, I'm going to have 3 squares across by 3 squares down for my back. And then let's just pretend this is my sleeve. So I'm going to have 2 squares across by 3 for my sleeve. And I'm going to have the same thing on the other side. Okay, so I'm going to have a total of 21 squares. I'm going to be 3 squares going across and down for the back area. And I'm just doing 2 squares by 3 because this is a long rectangle. So my squares are just going to continue for 21 squares total. And this is going to be my sleeves. This measurement right here, the 21 inches, is going to be the width of the sleeve. Okay, because when we fold this together, and it's also going to be the width of the back. Okay, 21 inches by 21 inches, okay? And then for the sleeve, we can always add to the sleeve. We can do rounds of granny stitches to add length to the sleeve. And then I'm gonna do a ruffle scalloped edge on the edge of the sleeve, but I want mine to be 3/4. If you wanted yours to be longer sleeves, you can add granny squares out here. I'm gonna show you as I go with this too, what it looks like as I'm doing it, okay? So I'm showing you this tutorial as I am making it, so you can see exactly how I'm doing it, okay? So I hope that explains. So measure across for your back and then decide if you're doing 3 squares or 4 squares. If I'm doing 4 squares, maybe I make the squares smaller. And where I'm doing 3 squares, I'm doing the squares larger. It's less work with 3 squares by 3 squares. If you're doing 4 squares by 4 squares, it's more work. Both way looks beautiful. So let's go back to the Yarn Studio so I can continue showing you how to do this granny square. Okay, and one more thing you have to consider is your seaming. So you can seam this any way that you choose. You can do a mattress stitch like I did on this one. For this shrug, I did a mattress stitch, and that does not add hardly anything to your measurements, okay? Because the mattress stitch is pulling your granny squares just all butted up together close, so it really doesn't add a lot to your measurements. Whereas in this shrug, I did a slip stitch or single crochet, and I wanted this sort of puffy look. I made it so that the stitching showed, the seaming showed, and this just adds a little bit. So by the time you add this seaming to all of your squares, it will add 1 inch or 2 to the overall measurements. So just keep that in mind when you're making this, and this you do not want super tight anyway, so it's nice to have a little bit of leeway on with your seaming. Okay, so that will add just a little bit. All right, so here we are back with our heart, and we need to make this into a granny square. So I have my yarn that I have been using for this project already to make all of my squares here, and I'm going to be adding 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 rows. Now maybe your measurement, you only need a 5-inch square or a 6-inch square. It's all up to you. So it, depending on the number, the measurement that you need, that will determine how big you make your squares. So your back measurement divided by 3, if you're making 3 by 3 squares, 3 squares, 3 granny squares across and 3 granny squares down, or divide by 4 if you want to have 4 granny squares going across and down. It's all up to you. All right, so we're going to take our heart, and we're going to take our other color, and you could always change color every single row if you wanted to also. All right, so we're always going to leave a tail, and what I like to do is just turn my heart around. So I'm going to not count this point. I'm going to skip 2, and then these next 2 are where our bottom corner is going to go, and then we're going to skip 2, and then here's our top corner. All right, and that is actually right after these 3 chains, and it is the first single crochet that we did over the treble stitch, but I like to just count from the back, and that way I know I'm in the right spot. So just insert your hook. I'm back to my 6mm hook for this part. I'm going to insert my hook here. I'm going to take my yarn, I'm leaving a tail, and I'm just going to pull it through and make my very first chain, and I like to turn it over and I like to tie a knot. That's just like how I like to do it. You can do it, you can attach any way that you prefer. And you can chain 2 or you can chain 3. It's all up to your personal preference. I'm just going to chain 3 here just for the sake of just being consistent. All right, so we have our first chain 3 that counts as our first double crochet. We're going to yarn over and we're going to go back into that very same place, that very same stitch that we just did that first double crochet, or that chain that counted as our first double crochet, with 2 more double crochets. So we're placing 2 more double crochets right in that same very stitch. So we have our chain 3 that counts as our first double crochet, and then 2 more double crochets. All right, and then we're chaining 2. That's our corner space. And then we're going to yarn over and we're going to go right into that very next stitch right here with 3 double crochets. All right, so we are making our first corner. So here's our very first corner. We have our 3 double crochets, chain 2, 3 double crochets. All right, we're not going to chain anything on the side at all. And we're going to skip 2 of these single crochets that we did on our border row. So I've already yarned over and I'm going to go into the next stitch here and I'm going to put a double crochet. Remember, we're not chaining on the sides. And then I'm going to place 2 more double crochets right into that very same stitch. Chain 2, that's our corner space. And then I'm going to place 3 double crochets in the next stitch. Okay, so I'm adding 3 double crochets right into that next stitch. Okay, so if we look back, we've got 1 corner up here and we've got 1 corner here. Okay, now we're going to chain 1 and we are going to skip 5 stitches. So count 1, 2, here's our point, 3, and then 2 more, 4, 5, skipping 5. All right, so we've already chained 1. We're going to yarn over and we're going to go into the stitch way over here with 3 double crochets in that same stitch. So there's 1, 2, 3. Okay, so we just had a chain 1 spacing going across here where we skipped 5 stitches. We have 1 chain 1 there. Okay, so we just did 3 double crochets here, and now we're going to chain 2 for our corner space. We're making our 3rd corner, and then yarn over, and we're going to place 3 double crochets right into this next stitch. 1, 2, 3. Okay, so we have our 3rd corner here with 3 double crochets, chain 2, 3 double crochets. We're not chaining on the side. I'm going to yarn over and I'm going to skip 2 stitches, and then I'm going to place 3 double crochets into the next stitch. 1, 2, 3. and then I'm going to chain 2 for our corner space, and then I'm going to yarn over. I'm going to go into the next stitch with 3 double crochets. Okay, so we have 3 double crochets, chain 2, 3 double crochets. That's our last corner of this row. Now I'm going to chain 1, and now I'm going to skip everything here, and I'm just going to join with a slip stitch into the 3rd chain of our initial chain 3. It should be the top of that chain 3, that 3rd chain. Loop over and pull through that stitch, and then pull through the loop on your hook. That joins with a slip stitch, and that completes our first row. All right, so now going on to the next row, and again, if you want to change color, you can. All right, I'm going to chain 3. That counts as our last double crochet of this row. All right, because this one counted as the first, this one's going to count as the last. We're going to yarn over. We're going to skip over all these double crochets and go into our corner space here with 3 double crochets. So 1, 2, 3. Okay, so this is the start of our first corner. So we have 3 double crochets. We're going to chain 2 for our corner space. And now we're going to put 3 double crochets right into that same corner space we're working into. Okay, so we put 3 double crochets. So we have 3 double crochets, chain 2, 3 double crochets. That's our new corner. All right, and then we're not putting any spaces between our clusters. We're going to be working into this side space here from our previous row. So yarn over and go right down into that big side space, and we are going to place 3 double crochets. Okay, so we have 3 double crochets. That is our side space or side cluster. And now we're going to make our next corner right here. So yarn over and place 3 double crochets here. 1, 2, 3, and now chain 2 for your corner space, and then 3 more double crochets right into that same corner space. You can always slow the video or stop the video or pause the video if I'm going too fast. Okay, so here's our second corner of this row. So we have our first corner, we have 1 side cluster, and our second corner. And then we're just going to repeat all around the row. So we have our bottom space here. We're not putting any chain between. We're just going to put 3 double crochets down into this side space. So 3 double crochets. And that's going to be our side cluster, and we really don't need our stitch marker anymore, so you can take that out if you want to. All right, so we have made our side cluster here in our side space from the previous row, and now we're going to be working into this corner space. For our next corner, we're going to yarn over, and we're going to place 3 double crochets. All right, so we have 3 double crochets to start our corner. We're going to chain 2 for our corner space, and then we're going to put 3 more double crochets right into that corner space. Okay, so we have 3 double crochets, chain 2, 3 double crochets for our third corner of the row. And then we have a side space here. Again, we're not going to chain. We're going to place 3 double crochets into the side space. 1, 2, 3. And then we're going to go up to our corner space here with a corner. So we're going to put 3 double crochets. That starts our corner. We're going to chain 2 for our corner space, and then we're going to finish our corner with 3 double crochets in the same corner space. Okay, so it looks like that. All right, now to end this row, do you remember when I told you the chain 3, our initial chain 3, that counted as the last double crochet of the row? So here's our top space. We're going to yarn over and we're going to place 2 double crochets into this top space. And then we are going to make a slip stitch in the top of the chain 3 here that we made. Okay, because that chain 3 is going to count as our last double crochet of the row. Okay, so this is what your heart square should look like so far. Okay, so this is with 2 rounds, and if I measure this, it is measuring about 4 inches across, okay? And my one round was about 3 inches across. This one is about 4 inches across once I block this. Okay, if I stretch it just very gently, okay, it measures about 4 inches across. So when I block this, it will be a 4-inch square. Now when we add one more round, it's going to be a 5-inch square. So when you did your measurement for your back and divided by either 3 or 4, depending on how many squares you want to place across, this is going to tell you how many rows you need. Okay, if you need 5-inch squares, 6-inch squares, 7-inch squares, just keep going until your square measures roughly at that measurement. And if you need to add a little bit of measurement to your square when you block them, you can just stretch them ever so slightly when you block them, and that will gain maybe a 1/2 inch if you're stretching your entire square. Okay, so let's do another round. So we're going to chain 3, and see how this chain 3 has been zigzagging. So this chain 3 counted as the first double crochet. This chain 3 counted as the last double crochet. Now this chain 3 is going to go this way, and it's going to count as our first double crochet of the row. So we're going to place 2 double crochets right here into this very first side space from our previous row. So see how our chain 3 is just going to keep zigzagging. It's either going to be the first double crochet or the last double crochet, and it's going to keep alternating. All right, so we made our first side cluster. So now we're going to skip right over to our corner space, and we're going to make our corner with 3 double crochets, chain 2, and then 3 double crochets into that corner space. This is our first corner of the row. Okay, just like that. And now we're going to go into these side spaces. Now this row we're going to have 2 side spaces. If we do another row, we're going to have 3 side spaces on each side. Each side is going to increase by 1 side space on every row that we add. Okay, so we're not placing any chains between. We're just going into our spaces with 3 double crochets for each side space, with no chain in between our clusters. So for each side space, we're going to place 3 double crochets. Okay, and now we're at our next corner. All of our corners are going to be done the same exact way. 3 double crochets, chain 2 for our side space, and then 3 double crochets to finish our corner. Okay, and then we have 2 side spaces from the previous row. We're going to place 3 double crochets in each of these side spaces, no chains in between. Okay, And then here we are at our next corner. All of our corners are done the same way. 3 double crochet, chain 2, and then 3 double crochet in that side space, and then in that corner space. Okay, so that finishes our 3rd corner of the row. And then we have 2 side spaces, so we're going to place 3 double crochets in each side space. Okay, and then here is our last corner of the row. So we're going to place 3 double crochets, chain 2, 3 double crochets into this corner space. That will finish our last corner of this row. Okay, and we have 1 side space here. So, right, so we're putting 3 double crochets into this side space. 1, 2, 3, and that ends our side space. All right, so then we're meeting up with our chain 3, which was our first double crochet of the row. So all we need to do is go into the top of the chain 3 with a slip stitch to join to finish this row. And your square should look like this at this point. Okay, so again, if we take a measurement, this is roughly about 5 inches. All right, so when I add 3 rows of the rows going around my heart, it's measuring about 5 inches. So again, depending on if you're making this with 5-inch squares, then for me, I would be doing 3 rows on each granny square. If I needed 6-inch squares, then I would just do another row. If I needed 5.5 squares, then I would do my final row with maybe a half double crochet to make up that 1/2 inch that I needed all the way around. So what you're going to do now is just continue making your granny squares. So I have added 1, 2, 3 rows to this, and these are going to be 5-inch squares. And then this one I added 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 rows, and it is measuring around 7 inches. Okay, about a 7-inch square when it's blocked. So if you can block your squares, I recommend it. It will flatten your heart out nicely. It will give your granny square, it'll make it nice and soft and give it that flexibility that you are wanting with your shrugs. So I really do recommend you blocking, and I will give you some blocking directions, and I will show you how I block this when I block my next group in my video. And what you're going to do is just continue making squares. So this square here, I made 3 and it has been blocked. So this is how it will change the shape just ever so slightly when you block it. It'll just stretch it out. It'll make it nice and soft and pliable. Just keep that in mind when you're blocking, and it's not going to really change the measurement too much unless you need to stretch it, and then you can just stretch it a little bit extra when you're blocking, and that'll give you some extra measurement also. So work on your own. If you need to go back to review the rows, if you're a beginner, the chain 3 is going to either be the first double crochet or the last double crochet. It's going to keep zigzagging across. So for here, this one was the first, last, first, last, first. So keep adding your rows. If you need a larger square, just keep adding more rows. And then once you're done, you're going to sew in your ends to your square and you're going to block. So I'm going to go off on my own and I'm going to make 6 more squares because that's what I need to make my shrug. So I'm going to make 6 more of these squares, and then I'm going to show you how I block my granny squares. Okay, so I'm going to continue making rounds. So I'm going to chain up 3. All right, and if you want to go back, first, last, first, last. So this chain 3 is going to be the last double crochet of our row. So when it's the last double crochet of the row, I skip over, so yarn over and skip over to that very next space for those beginners. Okay, and you're going to start your granny square cluster with 3 double crochets, and then you're going to move to your corner. And then when you get to the end of the row, because this one is the last double crochet, you're going to make 2 double crochets into this last space and then connect, just like we did here. Okay, so this is the first, last, and make sure your chain 3s are just zigzagging back and forth. So work on your own, continue making your squares until you have the number of squares that you need, and I will show you how to block them, and then I will show you how to lay these out and sew these together. Okay, and again, this is for my tutorial that I'm working on. So this shrug that I'm working on right now, I am making it 3 by 3 squares, so there will be 9 squares for the back panel, and then I am making 2 by 3 squares for each of the sleeves. So I need to make 6 more squares, so I have a total of 21 squares. I have the hearts made, I just need to make the rounds for the granny square. And I am doing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 rounds, and this is giving me about a 7-inch square. It's just slightly smaller than 7 inches, just a touch. And then once I put it on my blocking board, I'm not stretching it too much. I'm just squaring it off to a nice 7-inch square. So I'm going to have 21 7-inch squares when I am finished with this one. I have my blocking board here, and I am going to be blocking these squares. I'm not going to be stretching them a lot because they're just about at the size that I need them to be. So if I were to want to stretch them, I would just move my pegs a little bit so that I would be stretching these. But these are basically about the size that I need them to be. So they're not going to be stretched. I am going to steam them, and that is going to soften the fibers and shape the corners. So see how the corners are like this? They're folded up. It's not laying flat. And when I am done blocking these, they're going to be nice and soft and stretched out and flat, but really not going to change the size of them. It's just going to make them nice, perfect squares. Okay, so I have put them on my blocking board, and now I am going to heat up my steamer. And if you find that your hearts are bumping up like this, once we steam them, it's going to flatten them down. With your gauge, with your tension, you could always go down a hook size for your hearts if that continues to be an issue. But usually once I block these, the hearts, and steam them, the hearts flatten down very nicely. So let's steam these. I'm just going to steam around the edges. I'm going to steam around the top a little bit too, just to soften all of the yarn fibers. You want to make sure that the water doesn't spill out of your steamer and burn your yarn. And you can always just go like this all along the edges just to get that steam inside. But basically we're just running it along the edges and the corner just to sharpen the corner and the edges. And then we're just running it over the top just so the steam can go all the way down through the top and flatten out that yarn. It'll make everything nice and soft and flat. Okay, and once these are just damp, and you don't want them wet, you just want them slightly damp, and then we can shut the steamer off and then let these dry. You can let them dry for a couple hours or overnight, but as soon as they are dry, they should be good to go. Okay, and that's all we have to do with that. So we're just gonna let these dry, and then I will show you the layout. Okay guys, this is the funnest part of the project. So I have laid out all of my squares. I have 21 squares. They are 7 by 7 squares, and I have blocked them. So the corners are nice and sharp on the corners. I really did not stretch the squares into a different size, really. I just sort of squared them off and steamed them. So all of the squares, look Look how pliable they are. They're so nice and soft. So when you wear this, it is not going to feel like a stiff blanket. That is what blocking does. And then again, if you need to add a little bit to each square, you just stretch them a little bit when you block them. Just make your pegs a little farther apart. Okay, so I have 21 squares. So these 3 squares across by 3 squares down, this section right here will be the back. And we're going to be folding this in half, so it won't be this large. You won't have this whole area, because this is going to be curled up for your sleeves. So don't be afraid that this whole big square is going to be on your back. It's going to fold up as you wear it, because this is going to be folded in half, and this will be your sleeve. So your sleeve will be half of this, because we're going to fold this in half. So these 2 columns right here are my 3/4 length sleeves on that side, and my 3/4 length sleeves on this side. So if you just put 1 column of sleeves squares, it'll be a short sleeve. If you put 2 columns of squares, it'll be a 3/4 length sleeve. And if you were to put another column of sleeves, it would be long sleeves. Okay, and then also what I do, because I'm using these heart squares, and you could make this shrug in any type of square, like without the hearts. Because I'm using the hearts and I don't want my hearts in the front of my shrug to be upside down, I am turning the first 2 hearts on either side of my sleeves upside down, so that when I'm wearing it, it will be right side up, because this is the back. So this will be the top of the back behind the neck, and these will be the 2 front parts of my sleeve, if that makes sense. So I have everything laid out. Everything is nice and straight. All the edges are going to line up very nicely. So now it's time to start seaming everything together, and I'll show you that next. Wanted to show you, I have my measuring tape clipped here to the end of my work here at 0, and I'm going to take you right across these squares: 7, 14, 21, 28, 35, 42, 49. So look how exact that is for measurements. So that is why I block my squares. Everything is just squared up. All right, so all of these 21 squares laid across, the total width measurement right now before seaming is 49 inches. And then after we do the seaming, we will remeasure so I can show you the difference between not seaming and seaming. So if you were to do a mattress stitch, the width would not be added to. But we're going to do a little extra seam here to give us just a tiny, tiny bit between here. And I will show you how much that seam adds to the project. Okay, I think I have decided to do the seaming in the red color. I have plenty of this big twist red that I used for the hearts. Okay, so I have this all laid out, and I've already turned the first 2 hearts on either side for my sleeves. This will be the top here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to seam all of the horizontal lines first, and then I will do these lines second. You can do the horizontal lines first if you want, but I just find it easier just to add every single row to the stack. I'm going to do this row, and then I'm going to add these to that, and I'm going to add this row to these rows. So everything will be connected horizontally. I'm going to do all the vertical rows first, and then I'm going to do the 2 horizontal rows last. That way, when I try this on, I'm going to make sure it fits, and then if I needed to take one of these rows off, it would be really easy, because I'm not going to fasten off. I'm just going to leave it attached. So at any point, I could just take a row off, or I could add a row very, very easily that way. And then when I'm sure everything is good, I will do the long horizontal rows. Now you could seam these a variety of ways. I am using my 6mm hook. If you were to use a smaller hook, it might pucker and pull and make these seams too tight. And we want the seams nice and loose because we want them to be flexible when we are wearing this. So always leave yourself a tail. And then I'm just going to show you the variety of ways that you can do this. Okay, so if I wanted to just go into the front loops and just pick up the front loops, I will show you what that would look like. So just grabbing the front loop of each one, I'm leaving a tail. And then say I was just going to go in the front loop here. And then the front loop on the other side. Okay, so I'm looking for the next stitch. going into that front loop, which would be the ones farthest away. And then say I was just doing slip stitches. So you would yarn over, pull through, and then pull through that loop. So I'm going to do this one with a slip stitch using the front loops only on each square. So I'm not going tight at all because I don't want this to pull together. And I'm just going to show you a little bit of this, and you can just experiment and decide what type of seam that you are looking for. So if I was to do that seam, okay, it would look like this. It would look like a slip stitch on the front loops only. And then if I were to do back loop only, so I'm going to go into the back loops. So just look at your work and get the back loops. Back loops. Okay, so back loops would be the loops that are closest together on the square. Okay, and you can either do a slip stitch like we did before. Just pull it through very loosely. I'm just going to show you what this is going to look like if I were to do this one. It would look very similar, but because we're going into the back loops, it's just going to give us a different look. And you can just experiment on your first square and decide how you want it to look, okay? So that is what it's going to look like using the back loops only. It's going to spread out just a little bit more, but that's sort of the effect. Okay, I think what I'm going to do is do a single crochet in the back loops only, and I'm working on the good side of my work. You could also turn this around and work on the wrong side of your work, and that's going to give you a totally different look also. So just experiment with your seam and decide what type of seam that you want to use. So I'm going to pull this through and then loop over. So I think I'm going to do a single crochet because I really want that lifted up ridge in the center of my seams. I want it to look so cute. So I'm just doing this ever so loosely because I don't want to distort my squares. So I'm just doing a single crochet, back loop only on the good side of my work. Now I will turn this around. So this is what it's going to look like, and this is what I want it to look like. It's going to be a ridge right in the center, and it's going to look so cute. And then if you were to do this on the wrong side, you would just see these little dots everywhere, and that would be cute too. So it's just all up to you. So experiment whether you want to do your stitches on the good side or the bad side, the wrong side. Not the bad side, but the wrong side. And you can do front loop only, you could do back loop only, you could go through the whole entire stitch. Experiment and figure out which way you like the look of your seam. And remember, we are doing this nice and loose because if we were to go too tight, we would be having a really tight seam, and when we went to try it on, the seams would be tight and would pull. We want this to be nice and loose. And you could always do a mattress stitch. If you were to do a mattress stitch, you would cut your yarn longer than you need. So go across your area and maybe add half of that length. So you're that length plus of your work plus maybe a half, just to be on the safe side. And then you would take your darning needle and you would go in under a stitch here, under a stitch here, under a stitch here, under a stitch here. You would go right across your stitches, and you could do it that way also. I have tried it that way, and I find that the seams are very tight. There's not a lot of give in those seams. And I did that I will show you here in the video. I will show you an example. It's the one that I showed you with the multicolored squares, I did mattress stitch seams on that one. And there's just not a lot of give in those seams. It does look cute. It just butts these squares right up close together, and I'll just show you in the video how that looks. And that's what I did on that one. I did the mattress stitch. Again, I'm picking up the stitches that are closest together. Hopefully I have been in focus. My camera is just awful at not being in focus. Okay, and here's the last one here. Because we have 2 corner stitches. So when I go across vertically, I'm going to pick up the first stitch in the corner, and then when I seam this horizontal side, I'm going to pick up this other seam. Okay, so I have finished attaching 2 squares here, so I'm going to grab 2 more squares and sew those together. Okay, and here are my next 2 squares right here beside each other. So I'm just going to continue seaming right across until I have 6 squares hooked together. And when you go across your corner, you just grab the next stitch. So there's nothing complicated about it. I'm going into the back loops only, so I'm just grabbing the back loops, inserting my hook there. And then when I go this way, I'm just going to do a single crochet right over, just to skip over that space. And again, we're doing single crochets, nice and loose. And however you do your seam is up to you. If you love to do the mattress stitch, just do the mattress stitch. It's all up to you. And you can use a contrasting color for your seam like I'm doing, or you can use the same color seam, or any color. Experiment. Don't be afraid to experiment and try different things. And if you don't like it, you can just take it out. And when I get to the end of my connecting my 6 squares together, I'm going to cut my yarn and fasten off, but I'm not going to tie a knot. I'm going to leave it unknotted just in case I change my mind and need to take something out. I'm not going to weave in my ends is what I'm trying to say at the end of these. Just going to leave it loose, and then when I'm absolutely sure that I love it, then I will go around and weave in all of my ends. Again, we're going into the back loop only with a single crochet. That's what I'm doing, but you could use the front loops, you could use all loops, you could do a different seaming technique. It's all up to you. I love this, seeing the little ridge on the top. I think it's so romantic. So that's what I'm gonna do. Okay, let me get my yarn. Okay, and again, I'm going into the top, the first stitch of the corner, same as I have been. There's 2 stitches in the corner space. I am grabbing the back loop on each one, and I'm just using that one, okay? And that is how it's going to look, and let's grab 2 more squares. Okay, so here are my last 2 squares that I'm gonna add right here. And because I want my squares to be facing down in the back of my shrug, and then I want the first 2 on the sleeves to be facing the opposite way. So these 2 hearts are facing, the bottoms are facing this way, the tops are facing this way. So this is the top of the shoulder, and these 2 will be in the front. So I've just switched the directions on these 2 hearts so that the bottoms are facing this way, so they will be the right way when I'm wearing this. I have seamed across my first 6 squares horizontally, and I'm just going to cut my yarn at the end, and I'm going to pull it through, and I'm just going to leave it. I'm not going to weave in my ends. I'm just going to leave it just in case I need to take this apart, it will be nice and easy. So the last 2 squares for my first 6 that I'm sewing together, I have the hearts facing the opposite direction so that they will be laying front-ways on my arm. Okay, so these hearts, the bottom is facing this way on the first 2, the top 2. And then my other 4 hearts, the bottom is facing this way. I will show you once this is all laid out. All right, so I have connected my first 6, and now what I'm going to do is just continue to add 3 across the top and just keep going and add all of my vertical lines. Okay, just to show you, this is what it looks like. So I've added my ribbing right here, my seaming. I've added my seaming right along one of these horizontal lines. I have my 21 squares laid out, and I'm going to be, I attached my first 6 together. And if you look at these squares, almost all of these squares are facing up. So the bottom is towards me and the top is that way. This is the back. But on these 2 front squares for each sleeve, I'm turning the hearts so that the bottom is facing that way. That way when I'm wearing it on my sleeve, they'll be the right way. Just these 2 top ones, because these are my 2 sleeve squares. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to attach these 3 here. And then I'm going to attach the next 3. So all of these will be hooked together. I'm not just separating them up and maybe hooking these 6 together. I'm going to hook these 3 to here. So they'll all be connected, and I'm just going to work my way across vertically. Just to show you again, I've connected these 3 to this section. So now all of these 9 squares are connected this way. And again, I just turned around my 2 hearts on the 2 front of my sleeves, and all the rest of the hearts are facing with the bottom down. They're facing upright. Okay, and now I'm going to, see, these are all connected. So now I'm going to grab these and I'm going to seam these together to add these together. Okay, it is coming together. I have all of my vertical seams sewed. So I've done all of my vertical lines. And again, all of my hearts are facing this way except for the 2 top squares on either side of my sleeve. So they will be facing the right way when I'm wearing it. So this is the center 9. These are my 3/4 sleeves on either side here. And that took me about an hour, casually doing it, not rushing. And so now what I'm going to do is, if you were unsure if this was going to fit you, you would fold it in half and put some stitch markers and just try it on to make sure of the fit. I am not worried about the fit, so I'm just going to seam, go right across and do these 2 horizontal seams. And I always leave these unknotted, so I haven't knotted these. I've cut my yarn, but I haven't put a knot here, because in case I need to change anything, it's easy to rip these out. So I will only start sewing these together and weaving in my ends when I know that the fit is perfect. So whenever you're making a made-to-measure pattern, always try on as you go. Use your stitch markers to connect everything together if you're unsure of the fit, and never weave in your ends and finish your project until you know what fits you. So that is a little tip. I love it so far. Isn't it so cute? It's coming together. I'm so excited. Okay. And I wanted to show you the growth of this with the seams, just a tad, just a very little tad growth with the seams, probably a 1/2 inch. So if you look at the end here, it gained a 1/2 inch with these seams. I am going to be steaming these seams also, just to loosen them up just a little bit. Okay, I wanted to show you how I go across my corners. So I am approaching a corner here. So I just finished, let's see, I just finished the stitch here in the corner. I'm just going to do a chain. So this is right before the corner. I'm going to do a chain, and then I'm going to go into the very next stitch on the other side of my work. and just go right over that corner and just continue doing my seam. Okay, so I just went right over the corner. So do your seaming as normal and then chain 1 to go right over the corner and just continue. And I will go to the next corner and I'll meet you at the next corner to show you again. Again, we're just picking up every single back loop and going right across the square. And make sure you're not doing your seam too tight. If you are a tight crocheter, you may need to size up on your hook to do these seams so they don't pucker. Okay, so I like to go in just underneath here just to make my corners nice and clean. Okay, I pick up those 2 stitches there. And then I'm going to chain 1 just to go over, and then I'm going to pick up on the next square. So we get the back loops. And I just did the corner spaces, the corner space on each side. And then I'm just going to continue grabbing this back loop and doing a single crochet. And I'm working all the way across my horizontal seam. So it looks like that. And I'm just going to keep going. I'll meet you at the end. Okay guys, that took me about a half an hour to go across and do this entire seam. I have my second seam done, my horizontal seam. So what I'm going to do now is steam all of my seams to soften up the seams. And then I am going to fold this in half like this. And then I'm going to attach this to over here up to here. So I'm not going to seam this whole back area. I'm just going to sew a seam up to where the back area starts. So I'm going to sew my seams into here. But first I'm going to steam all of these seams to soften these ridges up. Okay, so I have steamed my seams. So I steam the front and the back of the seams just to soften up the seams so they're not so stiff. And that does add a little bit of a length to the width, overall width. So it was at 49 and now it is about 51.5. So it adds when you're loosening up these seams and steaming them. So if you are looking for some positive ease to your shrug, this will give it to you. It just sort of separates the seams so they're not so tight together and you're going to have more flow. So just keep that in mind when you're making your squares. If you plan on steaming your seams, it will loosen them up so they're not as tight, and that will add just a little bit of the overall length on here for the width length and for this length as well. Okay, so now we're going to fold this in half, and because of the way that I'm doing my seaming, I'm going to seam on the 2 right sides together. It all depends on your type of seaming. If you're seaming on the inside, then you would fold it inside, but I'm going to be using the same seam that I did, and I'm going to start from the outside, and I'm just going to seam up to here, and I'm not going to knot anything. I'm going to wait until I'm sure that the arms are what I want it to be, and the back size is what I want it to be. So I'm going to fold this whole shrug into a long tube, fold it in half lengthways, and then I'm going to sew from the outside of the arm up to the back area, and then stop, and then seam this area also, and then come to here and stop, and then I'll show you the results. Okay, we are getting closer to finishing this shrug. So I did seam up my 2 columns for my sleeve. So I brought the seam to here, finished it off there. And then I did the same thing on this side. So I started at the outside and I seamed up to here. Now, if you're doing whatever seam you did for the rest of the shrug, you're going to want to do the same seam. So I'm going to steam these seams because this is kind of stiff looking here, and I want it to be nice and soft like the rest of the seams. So I am going to steam these new seams here, and then what we're going to do is we're going to do a half double crochet all around this border. And then we are going to do a half double crochet on the sides, or probably a double crochet on the sides, and then we're going to do our scallops, and then we're going to make our drawstring for the sleeves. Now the sleeves you can finish any way you want to. If you want to create a ribbed cuff, you could just add a ribbed cuff to these sleeves. You can finish them any way you want to. And then also for back on the bottom, you could add a ribbed cuff on the bottom of this also, but I really like the look of just a half double crochet all around here. But it's all up to you. You can customize it any way you want to. So I'm going to steam these seams, and then we are going to do a half double crochet all around the top and the bottom to give it a nice border. Okay, so what we're going to be working on next is the border around the edge of where you're going to put this on, the center. You should be trying this on as you go. So every different thing that you're working on, your sleeves, everything, just keep trying it on every single time. Make sure it fits you. We are going to be going around this border with a half double crochet. When you tried it on, if you feel that it is a little too loose for you, you can go down a hook size for this part. So it's all up to you. I'm going to use my red, and we're going to attach, we're going to be working on the good side, and I like to attach right in a corner. So just fasten your yarn on. I like to just pull like a single crochet and tie it in the back. Just fasten it on however you prefer. And we're going to chain one. So that's going to count as our first half double crochet. And I am just going to do a half double crochet all around this border, all around the circle. Now, if you prefer doing a cuff, you can. I'll probably make another one of these, and then I will show you how to do the cuff, because on one of these, and I'll show you a video here while I'm talking, I did a cuff on the bottom, and it really looks nice to have a ribbed cuff on the bottom. I did one also. I'm trying to do them in different styles. So I did my last one, my white one, with just a half double crochet, and I really like the way it looks. So I'm doing just a half double crochet in every stitch. I'm going to go all the way around. And again, if you feel like you need to tighten this area up, just go down a hook size and just try it. Before you tie anything in a knot, try it on. There's lots of times when I have been making something where after I finish a certain part of it, I don't like it, and I just take it out and redo it and try a different way. So never sew anything permanently together with knots and hide your ends until you have tried it on and you're happy with it. Okay, so we're just going all the way around with a half double crochet. And then once we finish this part, we will work on the sleeves. So we're going all the way around with a half double crochet. And whenever you get to the armpit area, you just want to make it look as nice as possible. I'll show you what I do when I get to one, but here is an intersection. So I'm just putting a stitch right in sort of here and then going here. So just make it look as nice as possible. It doesn't really matter what you do with it. You could go in the center of this stitch if you wanted to. It doesn't really matter. All right, we're coming up to one right here. So what I do is I go in the corner, and then you can go sort of in the center as much as you can, wherever you can put your hook in there, and then just go to the next corner. So just make it look as neat as you can. There's no set way to do it. And you can always use the same color as the shrug for this border. You can use a contrasting color like I'm doing. You can customize this however you like it color-wise. Okay, so keep going around. Here is one of the armpit areas, and I'm just going to show you how I'm going to do the armpit area, and then I will let you work on your own, and I will meet you at the end. So I'm just going to make this look as nice as possible. So I'm going to go into here, and then I'll probably go into like right here, and then go to the next corner space right here, and then just keep going. So again, it's all up to you. We're just making this go around here. And again, if you need to tighten this up, just go down a hook size and keep working on your own. Pause the video and I will meet you at the other side. Okay, we are working back all the way around. And like everything, once you get to this end, do not make a knot and finish it off until you are sure that you like how this fits. If you need it to be tighter, you can take it out and go down a hook size. It's all up to you. But make sure you're trying this on as you go so that every different part you know fits you. So what I'm going to do once I get here is I'm just going to try to make it look as nice as possible. And then what I'm going to do is just connect with a slip stitch. If I can get my tail out of the way, get out of the way. Okay, so I'm just going to join with a slip stitch right here, and I'm just going to cut my yarn, and I'm going to pull it through like this, but I'm not going to knot anything. I'm going to try this on and make sure I like it, and if I like it, then I will hide my ends. So I'm going to try this on. Okay, I love the way this looks, so I'm happy with that. So I will hide my ends in later. So let's move on to finishing off the sleeves. Now, when you're trying this on, this is fitting to me like a large. Okay, it's made to measure. You might find that your sleeves are quite large. Don't worry about that, because when we finish this off, we're going to be using a drawstring to tighten this, and these will just be nice full sleeves. Okay, where these sleeves are quite large anyway, and we're going to be putting a drawstring, you can either use a 6mm like we have been doing, or you can go down a hook size. So I'm just going to try to do my hooks, my sleeve trim with a 5mm and see if I like it. And if I don't like it, I can always take it out and redo it with a 6mm. Where these are quite large at the end, if you like it like that, then you can just keep it like that. If you plan on not using a drawstring, or if you plan on putting a cuff, it is all up to you. But I'm going to work on this using my 5mm because we're going to be drawing it in anyway with the drawstring. So what I like to do is just find where the seam is coming from here. So attach your yarn. I just like to attach mine with a single crochet, tie in the back, and we are working on the good side of the work. And I'm just going to leave it like that, because if I don't like how this looks with a 5mm, I can take it out and try it with a 6. Okay. And what we're going to do is we're going to do a row of double crochet. So we're going to chain 2. That counts as our first double crochet. And then in every single stitch, we are going to be placing a double crochet. And this is where we are going to place our drawstring. Now, if you are finishing this off differently, then you can do it whatever way you want to. In this tutorial, I'm going to show you how I finish this off using a drawstring. So I do 1 row of double crochet, and then we're going to put a scallop. And then when we make our drawstring, we're going to weave it in here, and then we will cinch it in, and that will give us nice, pretty, puffy sleeves. And you can finish this any way that you want to finish your sleeves. If you prefer doing a cuff, then you can do a cuff. If you want to do a ribbing, you can do a ribbing. It's all up to you. And I plan on making more of these and showing you different variations so that you can sort of mix and match how you finish your sleeves. Going all the way around, and when we get to the end, we're just going to slip stitch to join. Now, when you come to one of your seams, you can just do a double crochet here in this corner space, and then skip over here and do the next double crochet in the next corner space, because we're going to be cinching this up anyway. I love it when I get to the end of a project that I've been working on for a long time and seeing the results. It's so fun to have this coming all together. It really is. I hope you're enjoying it. I hope you're loving your shrug. And again, you can just customize this by changing up the colors. You can change how you do your seaming. You can try to do one with a mattress stitch. You can try to do one with a slip stitch. You can do your seams on the inside so they do not show. You can do them on the outside so they do show. And then you can just change your finishing touches up however you want. You can put ribbing around the back. You can put ribbing actually around the whole thing if you wanted to. Okay, so we're just putting a double crochet in each of the corner spaces. And we are coming around. We're almost at the beginning again. This does not take long to finish this shrug up at this point. And you can also experiment with making your shrug with more smaller squares or larger, less squares. It's all up to you. I have done one with 3 squares, and I've done one with 5 squares, and they all look cute. All right, so here is our beginning. Okay, so we're going to put our last double crochet here in this last corner space, and then we're going to skip right over the seam, and we've already started our double crochet here with our chain 2 that we did in this corner space. So we're just going to slip stitch in the top of that chain 2 that we did. And now we're going to do our scallop. So we're going to chain 3. We're still using the 5mm, and this is all personal preference. So if you want to keep your larger hook, you can. It's just all up to you. You can try a little bit of your work and see if you like it or if you need to change hooks. Okay, so we have chained 3. That counts as our first double crochet. So we're going to make 5. Actually, we're going to, I think we have 5 in our scallop. So let's do 4 more double crochets. So we have 1, 2, 3, we got to do 1 more. So our scallops are going to be 5 double crochets. And we have done our chain 3, that counts as our first double crochet. And then we added 4 more double crochets into that same stitch. Okay, so we're going to skip 1 stitch, and we're going to place a single crochet in the next stitch over. Then we're going to skip another stitch, and then we're going to place 5 double crochets into that next stitch. All the stitches are going into that 1 stitch. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1 more. Okay, so that's 5 double crochets for our scallop. And then we are skipping 1 stitch, and we are placing a single crochet in the next stitch right there. And then we're going to skip a stitch, and then we're going to place 5 double crochets in the next stitch. 3, 4, 5. Okay, so this is how our scallop is looking, and we're going to put our drawstring right here. And I'm going to use the blush pink for the drawstring, I think. But it's all up to you what colors you use for this. Okay, so we finished our 5 scallops. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We're going to skip a stitch and place a single crochet in the next stitch, and then skip a stitch and place 5 double crochets in the next stitch. One, 2, 3, 4, 5 double crochets in our scallop. We're going to skip a stitch and put a single crochet in the next stitch, skip a stitch, and then place 5 double crochets in the next stitch. So you can pause the video and continue making your scallops going all the way around. We're doing 5 double crochets in one stitch. You're going to skip one stitch, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, skip one stitch and put a single crochet in the next stitch, and then skip a stitch and put 5 double crochets in the next stitch for your next scallop. So work on your own and I will meet you at the end. Okay, we are approaching the end of our sleeve scallop here. 3, 4, 5. Okay, and we're skipping one, placing a single crochet here, and then you can just decide whether you want to place, I can probably fit one more scallop here. So let's put it one more scallop and see if we like the way it looks. If we don't like the way it looks, we can take it out and just do some single crochets to meet the other scallop. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then we are going to be ending there. I think it looks nice. So what I did was just I skipped a stitch and I put a single crochet here in the next stitch, just as normal. And what I'm going to do is just go up to my chain 3 that we made and just slip stitch to join. And I think that looks nice. And depending on your sleeve measurement, you might end differently. So just make it look as nice as possible. If you cannot fit another scallop in here, you can just do a couple single crochets and then connect with your chain 3. And with a slip stitch. And then, like always, try on the sleeve, make sure you like the way it looks, okay? And I think I like that. I think using a 5 hook made a very nice scallop edge. Okay, and I will be sewing in my ends later. What I'm going to do is make my chain so I can show you how we finish this. And it is late at night, so I might have to wait until morning to show you how this looks because the lighting is going to be so bad. Okay, so for this drawstring, it's all up to you what you use for your hook. It really doesn't matter. I think I'm going to use my 5mm, but you can use your 6mm. It doesn't matter. So what we're going to do is just do a slip knot here for our end. We're going to insert our hook and we are going to make a chain, a long chain. I'm not even counting at this point. So what I'm going to do is make my chain long enough. So keep making chains and I'm going to make it long enough so that I can pull this in and make a bow. And that's all we're looking for. So the exact number really doesn't matter. You're just going to make it long enough. You're going to put it up to your cuff and make sure you can go all the way around and tie a bow, and we are going to be cinching it in. And then when I'm done this whole shrug, I will show you how much yarn I have used. I have barely broken into my 3rd skein for my pink. Okay, so that's plenty long enough. So I'm going to just fold it in half because I don't have the space here too. And it's about 16 inches folded in half. So it's double that. So 32 inches, but we will not be needing it. And so what we're going to do is get our yarn needle. So you're going to get your yarn needle. I'm trying to think where it looks. Anyway, you can put your bow in and then decide where you want to tie it. I'm trying to think where I tied it. I think it looks best up here, but it's all personal preference. So just insert your needle in here, in one of your seam holes right here. And then what I like to do is just go under and over 2 double crochets. So just go under and over, weaving this in under and over. And then make sure you try it on. Tie the bow cinched up a little bit and If you need to change the placement of your tie, then you can just pull out your drawstring a little bit and move it. That's what I had to do on the other one because the bow ended up on the bottom of my sleeve instead of sort of on the top. Okay, so cinch it up a little bit, however tight you want it. And then you're going to tie a bow like that. And then you're going to try it on and make sure you like that. And when you tie knot your ends and cut off your extra, make sure that you want to wear it this tight. If for some reason you think that you want to wear it maybe looser, just put it wherever you feel like you think it's comfortable for you. Okay, so I want you to try that on and make sure you like it before you cut your excess off. And this is going to be so cute. Isn't that adorable? All right, so I'm going to try it on and make sure it looks good. If it does, I'm going to do the same thing to the other sleeve. Okay, so this looks adorable. So what I'm going to do is just I like to put 2 knots in my chain. And I'm going to leave this a little bit extra because the person who is wearing this, I want them to have some extra. This is not for me. I'm going to be listing this for sale. But to me, this is fitting like a size large because I'm usually a size medium. And it's just a little big for me, just a little big. But it is so cute, so if you want an oversized, it would fit perfect if you were a medium. But it's all up to you. This is a made-to-measure pattern, so you're making this to fit you. So I am leaving this amount so that if the person who gets this wants to wear these sleeves looser, if they have larger arms, then they will be able to. But this is going to hit, you know, sort of like a 3/4 sleeve. It's not sort of a long sleeve and it's not a short sleeve. It's just sort of like a 3/4 sleeve. And I want them to have that extra. So now you can go back and hide in all of your ends. And I am going to do the same exact thing to the other sleeve. Okay, I have finished my second sleeve, and what I do is I just hold it together, the sleeves together, so I can cinch the second sleeve just like I did for the first one. So I sort of gauge it like this so they're the same size. And I have my bows here, and I did leave a little bit extra for somebody that has a larger arm for me. So they do have a little bit of ends here, but if you're making this for you, you could make it as tight or as loose as you wanted to. All right, so I'm gonna go through and hide any ends, weave in my ends, but let me show you how much yarn I used on this project. Okay, so for the hearts, I did use some little balls that I had. I had a few little balls of red that I made all of my hearts with, and I made 21 hearts for this size. And then I just broke in, and I've used this, you know, this much out of this skein. So not very much, but I did break into a full skein. So you're gonna need whatever color you're making the hearts, and you can make the hearts all different colors. It's up to you what colorways you use, but it doesn't use very much yarn for the heart color, the trim color. I used 2 full skeins of the big twist, and this was the light rose that I used. It's a blush pink color. And then I have this much. I have just about a full skein, but I did break into this just to a little bit, just a tiny little bit to do this drawstring and maybe to finish off a square, but I used very little of this. And I will weigh this finished shrug to give you like a weight measurement so you can calculate how much yarn you used. But I used 2 full skeins of the big twist plus a little bit of a 3rd skein of my body color. And again, if you're using scraps, you can just use your scraps. If you're using multiple colors for this, then you will need that yarn. And then I just used a little bit of the red. Okay guys, it is morning and look at how cute this is. It is so cute. Of course, it's just a little bit big for me because I wanted to make this more of a size large. I'm a medium, so this is gonna look a little bit large for me, but I wanted to show the different sizes. Isn't this so cute? I love the sleeves. They're not too long. I love it. Let me know what types of tutorials you are looking forward to, and I will see you on the next video.